Hey guys, welcome back to this YouTube channel. I'm Wana Sharon. If you have not subscribed, kindly subscribe, like and drop a comment down there. You can also hit the bell icon in order to get updates whenever a new video is uploaded. So today we are going to talk about ways to control high blood pressure, especially without carrying out medical treatment. But of course, with high blood pressure or hypertension, a lot of money is normally used for medication, and of which in this video we are going to look at the natural methods that do not require money or any subscription in a medical cover or something like that, so as to have the treatment. So with a number of lifestyle changes, we are going to look at a few ways highlighted in which one can be able to lower the blood pressure without the risk of heart attack or cardiac arrest. And when we talk about hypertension, HBP, this is just the force of blood against the arteries, especially when the force is high and high above 140/90. And it can also be extremely severe if your pressure is above 180/120. So in these cases, one may have a lot of medical challenges that may culminate into other kind of lifestyle diseases, which can be cardiology, which can be a problem with developmental arteries, and a number of cases, and of which we are going to talk about self-care and diuretics, which are one of the most proposed medical treatment that do not require any medication to any person. So if you've been diagnosed with high blood pressure, you might be worried about taking medication, especially to reduce the blood pressure. However, lifestyle here in this video plays a key role in treating one's blood pressure, and especially if the blood pressure is successfully controlled with a healthy lifestyle, you might avoid, delay or reduce the need for medication. And here comes the number of methods in which we can control the blood pressure without medication. I still remind you, kindly subscribe and like our video. And you can as well share widely such that it can be able to help us in our society. So the first method is lose extra pounds and watch your waistline. Blood pressure increases especially with an increase in weight. Being overweight, of course, can cause disrupted breathing while you are asleep, which at times, of course, we call it sleep apnea, which further raises your blood pressure. So when you are unable to sleep and maybe you have a breathing difficulty, this will be able to enhance or to up your blood pressure, which becomes a problem. Therefore, weight loss is one of the most effective lifestyle change, which is very vital in controlling of blood pressure. Losing even a small amount of weight, especially for those people who are obese, of course, can lead to lowering of the blood pressure. In general, you may reduce your blood pressure by about 1 millimeter of mercury with each kilogram of weight you lose. So that means when you lose 1 kilogram of your weight, then you also equally lose 1 millimeter of mercury pressure. And of course, beside the shedding maybe the high weight or pounds, you generally should also keep an eye on your waistline. Now, when we talk about waistline, what are we talking about here? Carrying too much weight around your waist can put you at a greater risk of high blood pressure. I know maybe some people may have not noted about that, so you really need to work on and checking the weight in your waistline. In general, men are at risk if their waist measurement is greater than 40 inches. And 40 inches, of course, is approximately equals to 102 centimeters. And when we get to the women, of course, are at a higher risk if their waist measurement is greater than 35 inches, which is 89 centimeters. So you have to check up with as an individual, maybe you have family members, you have your siblings, you need to check up with them such that you get to know exactly what is their waist measurement. Because waist measurement, as I've said, is very vital. If one doesn't take care of it, it may put one at a greater risk of high blood pressure. Now, how do we handle this? Then you need to get to your doctor about a healthy waist measurement for you. Now, the second point here we want to talk about is exercise regularly. Now, how do we exercise regularly? You need to understand that regular physical exercise, of course, for instance, like 50 minutes a week or about 30 minutes most days or a week, can lower blood pressure by about 5 to 8 millimeters of mercury. So that means if your blood pressure is high, you need to consider exercising. And if you stop exercising, that means your blood pressure will definitely be able to rise. So if you have elevated blood pressure, exercise can help you avoid developing hypertension. If you already have hypertension, regular physical activity can bring your blood pressure down, especially to safer levels. And now some examples of aerobic exercise you may try to lower blood pressure, of course, may include the morning jogging or evening cycling, walking around. You may do swimming, or you can get to practice of dancing. We have dancing competitions where people do salsa, they do reggae, but of course it's not a form of entertainment, but is a non-medical form that we are going to use in order to reduce hypertension. Of course, you can also try high-intensity interval training, which involves alternating short bursts of intense activity with subsequent recovery periods of light activity. That means you strengthen your training, also can help reduce blood pressure. And they aim to include strength training exercises at least 2 days a week. Talk to your doctor about developing an exercise program. Of course, this can be done following a specific or a particular kind of routine that will enable one to be able to shed the extra weight and to have their weight monitored into safer levels that will help reduce or bring the blood pressure down. And in the same breath, I want us to talk about the most crucial aspect, that is eating a healthy diet. Now, eating a healthy diet that is rich in whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and of course low-fat dairy products, which are less in cholesterol, will help to reduce the blood pressure by 11 millimeters of mercury, especially if you have a high blood pressure. This eating plan is known as dietary approach, which is meant to stop hypertension. So now, that means one has to check on their diet. You need to check on what kind of foods you eat, what type of fruits. Especially you need cholesterol and fat-free type of foods. And this will enable you to check on your blood pressure. Of course, I know it's not easy to change your eating habits, but with these tips that we are bringing onto you through this wonderful YouTube channel, you can adopt a healthy diet. For example, you keep a food diary where you write down what you eat, even just jump a week. For example, you can shed surprising light on a true eating habits. Monitor what you eat, how much and when and why. So you need not just to feed yourself on junk kind of food. You always need to monitor and check the amount of food you're eating, why you're eating them, when you're eating, and probably at what time are you having that input. Another thing, you need to consider boosting potassium. Of course, potassium always lessens the effect of sodium on blood pressure. And by the way, sodium is one of the components when in the blood increases the blood pressure. And that is why people living with hypertension, we always advise them to avoid sodium chloride or salt. So in this case, The best source, of course, of potassium food is fruits, vegetables, rather than supplements. Talk to your doctor, of course, on how you can lower the potassium, you can boost the potassium levels, and which will aid in reducing the amount of sodium levels. And now, our next issue here is you need, of course, to be a smart shopper. That means you need to know how do you shop, where do you shop from, what type of meals do you need to include to shop, such that you avoid having those meals that will again help increase the hypertension levels. Now the next point, the next issue that we want to talk about is reducing sodium in your diet. And of course, we've talked about how do we reduce sodium. And even sodium reduction in the sodium in your diet can, of course, improve your heart health. Other than, of course, blood pressure, which can be reduced by about 5 to 6 millimeter of mercury. For those people who have high blood pressure, sodium equally plays a very key role in improving the heart health, the heart contraction, the circles one has in the beats of the heart, and those are the most key important points that sodium plays. Now, of course, the effect of sodium intake on blood pressure varies among groups of people, and in general, of course, limit sodium to about 2,300 milligrams a day or less. However, lower sodium intake of about 1,500 millimeters or less in a day is very, very much significant for most adults. So what do we need to do? Then we have to monitor the intake of sodium in our diet. Now, to decrease sodium in your diet, kindly, we need to consider the following tips. For instance, you don't need to add excess salt in your food. Just 1 level teaspoon, which is approximately 2,300 milligrams of sodium, can be used. But of course, if you can avoid having salt, the better. But of course, we can use herbs or spices that have some natural salt instead of having sodium chloride. And again, you need to read food labels. Now, how many people read the labels in their food before they buy? For example, you've decided to go and buy water, you buy chocolate, you buy coconuts, or you buy something that is, of course, that has been packed. Now, packed food always have labels, so probably you need to choose low levels of sodium, which is alternatively better instead of getting to higher levels of sodium. Now, another thing that we need to look at here is you eat fewer processed foods, and in most cases processed food contain high amount of sodium, which have been added, of course, is one of the enhancement that is being added when you are packaging and processing foodstuffs, and therefore we need to avoid too much of processed foods. And of course, finally, we need to ease into it. If you don't feel like you can drastically reduce the sodium in your diet suddenly, cut back gradually. Your pellet will adjust over some time. So that means you can be able to reduce on that. And then maybe the next point that we need to look at is limiting the amount of alcohol you drink. And by the way, alcohol is either good or bad for one's health. By drinking alcohol only in moderation, generally one drink a day for women, and of course, if it is 2 drinks for men, you can potentially lower your blood pressure by about 4 millimeters of mercury. So that therefore means that you need to check on the amount of alcohol you take. When those people who take too much of the alcohol have a high risk of developing high blood pressure. 1 drink, of course, equally 12 ounces of beer, 5 ounces of wine, or 1.5 ounces of 80 proof of liquor. But that protectively effect is lost if you drink too much of alcohol. Drink more than moderate amount of alcohol. Of course, can actually raise your blood pressure by several points. If you can also reduce the effectiveness of blood pressure medications, then you are good to go. So other than alcohol, of course, then that leads us to the next point, which is smoking. You actually need to quit smoking if it is possible. Especially each cigarette you smoke increases your blood pressure for many minutes after you finish. Stopping smoking helps your blood pressure return to normal. Quitting smoking can reduce your risk of heart disease and improve your overall health. People who quit smoking may live longer than people who never quit smoking. And of course, you will need to actually quit smoking if you want to check on your blood pressure. And then the next point that I want us to talk about is you need to check on your caffeine levels. The role of caffeine plays in blood pressure is still debated on by scientists. And of course, we've noted that caffeine can raise blood pressure up to and including 10 millimeters of mercury in people who rarely consume it. But because people who drink coffee regularly may experience little or no effect on their blood pressure. So what does that tell us? That for those people who take coffee and they don't take it for long, and maybe they work on coffee for a short period of time, they are most likely to develop high blood pressure, unlike those people who take coffee on a daily basis. Although, of course, the long-term effect of caffeine on blood pressure aren't clear, it's possible blood pressure may slightly increase, of course. To see if caffeine raises your blood pressure, check on your pressure within 30 minutes of drinking a caffeinated beverage. If your blood pressure increases by 5 to 10 millimeter of mercury, you need to be very sensitive that this may cause an impact to you, and you need to talk to your doctor about the effect of caffeine on your blood pressure. And then now we need to look at stress. Of course, chronic stress may attribute to high blood pressure. More research is needed to determine the effect of chronic stress, especially stress, and in occasional stress, of course, can contribute to high blood pressure if you react to stress by eating unhealthy food, drinking of too much alcohol, and smoking. Of course, we have those people who occasionally, when they are faced with a stressing condition, they decide to eat unhealthy food, or they resort to taking too much of alcohol. And this therefore confirms to you that it can be able to become a big challenge, since it may increase the blood pressure. Now, take some time to think about what causes your stress. Now, especially when you have issues about stress, maybe stress emanating due to illness, finances, family, or at work, then you really need to consider how to eliminate or reduce the stress, other than resorting into alcohol, smoking, and taking of unhealthy food that may increase the blood pressure. If you can eliminate all of your stressors, you can at least cope with them in a healthier way. Of course, at times, how do we now reduce this stress in order to avoid increase in blood pressure? You always need to change your expectation. For example, you need to plan your day, focus on your priorities, and avoid trying to do much and learn to say no. Understand there are some things you can't change or control, but you can focus on how you can react to them. Now, by changing your expectation, then you lower the amount of stress, which equally lowers the blood pressure. And then you need to focus on issues you can control and make plans to solve them. And if there is something you cannot control or manage, or if you have a conflict with your kids or a spouse or anything else, kindly you need to resolve it and avoid being stressed. Avoid stress triggers. Of course, we may have people who are stress triggers. We can have public transportation, rush hours, and most of these cause a lot of stress. So you really need to avoid stress triggers and practice relaxing and practice gratitude. Express gratitude to others. And this can be able to help monitor or reduce your stress, and equivalently, it can be able to lower the blood pressure. Now, how do we monitor your blood pressure at home and see your doctor regularly? And by the way, if you monitor your blood pressure at home and see your doctor regularly, then this is one aspect that is helping you keep your blood pressure at check. You need to work on your lifestyle, especially at work. You always need to, maybe you need to alert your doctor to potential health complications. And that is why we are saying that monitoring your blood pressure at home and seeing your doctor regularly is one way in which you can be able to reduce that. So blood pressure monitors are available widely without, of course, a prescription. Talk to your doctor about home monitoring before you get started. And you can, of course, do what's called regular visits with your doctor, and which are also key, especially in controlling your blood pressure. If your blood pressure is well controlled, check with your doctor about how often you need to check it. Your doctor may suggest checking it daily or less often. If you are making any changes in your medication or other treatments, your doctor may also be able to recommend. Now, finally, you need to get support. Now, how do we get support? Supportive family and friends can help you improve your health. They may encourage you to take care of yourself, drive you to the doctor's office, or embark on extra exercise program with you to keep your blood pressure low. If you find you need support beyond your family and friends, consider joining a support group. This may put you in touch with the people who can give you an emotional or morale boost. And of course, this one will help you to cope up with your condition. So guys, I hope you've really enjoyed this session where we've talked on how we can manage the blood pressure. And of course, when the blood pressure is not properly managed, it can get to a more severe, and this can get fatal, and it may lead to loss of lives. So we really need to check on this, and that is why through this YouTube, we are getting to you through the most effective, the most good way in which you can control your blood pressure without medication. This means these are the most natural methods that are easily accessible, even to anybody who doesn't have any finances. Thank you so much, and I'm privileged to be one of the persons resourceful enough to bring for you this kind of nuggets.